Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Calvas, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have another very interesting topic, and I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about how to publish in high impact journals. In today's competitive world of academia, publishing in high impact journals is the gold standard for success. Whether you are a seasoned scholar or just starting your research journey or an established researcher, this webinar is designed to empower you with the knowledge and strategies to navigate the complex landscape of academic publishing. So you will get the best insight and right information in this session because we have an expert with us in today's this session. So stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Carlos for arranging such enlightenment sessions for their support and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Carlos is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world-renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their experiences, recommendations, and suggestions, which will create an impact and will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually, as well as to contribute to the world in a positive way. As our slogan is calm, learn, and share knowledge. So today we have amazing person as guest. He's a multi-talented person with a great qualities, having a vast experience and exposure, internationally known and recognized speaker. He's always ready to extend the helping hand and always ready to share his knowledge. So let me introduce him formally. He's an associate professor in economics at the University of Leeds and visiting research fellow at the University of Cambridge. He holds a PhD in economics and is greatly interested in the areas of monetary economics, macroeconomics, financial economics, and international economics, and energy and environmental economics. His recent book is entitled Off the Target: The Stagnating Political Economy of Europe and Post Pandemic Recovery. In addition to that, he is also the associate editor of the Journal of Environmental Management and Research in International Business and Finance. He is the guest editor of very reputed journals, for example, the Energy Economics, Quarterly Review of Economics and Finance, Technological Forecasting and Social Change, and the Risk Analysis. Moreover, currently he is working on the challenges of macroeconomics policy formulation and issues around financial, economic, and environmental stability, particularly in the post-COVID-19 world. Last but not the least, he is a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, researcher, professional, and above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Dr. Muhammad Ali Nasir. Welcome to the Calvas platform and thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shah, for a very kind introduction. And thank you very much for having me, for a kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you and the audience about this topic. So, as the topic is already been put out, that is how to get published in the high impact journals. Uh, the things I would be talking about, they are relevant to the specific area of economics, finance, business studies, but I think the core principles are same across the disciplines. And if you are doing a scientific research and you are aiming to publish in a scientific journal, the principle more or less they remain same. So in today's session, I would be talking about briefly. There are a lot of things I'll touch upon, but I will start with the importance of publication in this, in the academia and the scholarship, and also the notion of publish or perish. I will reflect upon some of the subtle differences between the PhD and the scholarly article, the research article, and what makes a research article a good research article. I will talk about the structure and the quality of scholarly articles, and when it comes to the selection of the journal, which are the factors we should look at when we are deciding where to send our paper. And I will also provide editor's view. Well, that is maybe my view when I look at the paper when I'm editing any articles, the journals. And there are other things like which are relevant when it comes to publication. For instance, writing a good covering letter, I think that is very important. And also, I will provide an a bird eye view or overarching view of the editorial process for the young researchers if they are in the audience. And very often when we submit, we do get well, either rejection or revision. Rarely a article straight away gets acceptance. So then how to deal with any comments we receive from the reviewers, that's very important. And some of the ethical issues related to publishing, and at the end, once your article gets accepted, what are the next phases or processes. So starting with the why we should publish. Well, the universities and researchers, they are nowadays judged more on their record of publications in refereed journals. So it is not only good for the reputation of individual or the scholarship, but also for the institution where they are working. So therefore, the whether it is the career progression or reward in a way, or even for the self-esteem, I think it is good for the scholars that they publish. But that is one of the demand, I think, of our role as an academic. If you are working in higher education institution or university, that you got to publish. And uh, well, once we do PhD, some people they publish a lot, some people don't publish a lot. It depends on personal preferences and choices. But one factor which is very important, if a person decides to take the path of publishing and being a academic who has published a lot and done a lot of research in their career, is the perseverance, persistence. That is very, very important. It is a kind of cyclical process which never finishes. So you become with an idea. If you do not take that idea forward, like sometimes happens to me, I do get sometime a good idea, but then there's no time to materialize that idea and work on that idea. And after a few days, the idea disappears and forgets about that. But that's very important that we take on the next step or we take research. If we do the research and if we leave it there, it never gets anywhere. It gets perished unless it gets into a written form. Okay, and then it is published. And once we start with an idea and we have published, we go back and again we start with an idea. We do research, we write up, we try to publish it, we send to different journals. Some of them we get rejections, eventually we get accepted and we get published, and then we start with a new idea. So this is a cyclical process which never finishes. But if a person is a research active, I notice even if they publish maybe one article in a year, it and keep themselves active and keep their brain active, I think, in terms of critical thinking, it is relatively easy for them to keep publishing. Rather, you take a break from publication completely and you stop publishing or stop doing research, then it becomes slightly difficult to come back to it. So I think that that is also an important factor. Now, uh, as I said, I will say something about the difference between the PhD thesis and research publication. So, if you are an early career researcher, you have done a PhD. So, the PhD world was slightly different from post PhD life, and therefore, the a PhD thesis is very different from a research paper. So, PhD is a defensive document. Therefore, you have a defense of your thesis. In many countries, we call it thesis defense. So you defend your position in front of a very small coterie or group of scholars. So in a way, it is also writer-centered, and you have a thesis, an idea, an argument which you are defending. And if you are able to defend it in front of two, three people, then you have availed your PhD. However, when it comes to scholarly article, they are more persuasive. They are outward looking and they are reader centered. So when you are doing it, you basically contribute to the knowledge. Your intention is to contribute to the knowledge and you are doing something for the wider readership. Your article would be read by hundreds or thousands of people, and before that he'll of course go through the review process, but it you are engaging with a very wider a very wide readership. And as you used the word of gold standard earlier, it reminded me of Dr. Fauci. He was once saying that the peer reviewed journal articles, they are the gold standard of scholarship and scientific knowledge creation. So yeah, that is the way in the modern world to contribute to the knowledge, by publishing the peer reviewed research. And if a research is peer reviewed, that's authentic, and that's takes the knowledge or extend the scholarships further. Now, how to write a good manuscript for a good journal? Uh, uh, Before we answer that question, it is important to keep in mind who deals with our research paper or who will deal with it. Editors and reviewers are the people, they deal with the research paper which we submit to a journal. And of course, they are the people which have expertise in the subject. And editors, they themselves have published significantly in the area in which now they are editing a journal. So they also have time constraint, that is important. And editors, they do get small payment depending on the publisher, which publisher it is. It's not a lot. Reviewers are not very often paid, so they do perform the reviewing services voluntarily. There are some journals, they do pay very small amount, very small amount to reviewers, but usually I would say 95% of the journals, or maybe more, they don't pay anything. So the reviewers perform these duties voluntarily. But these are the people we deal with. Now, once we are thinking of publishing something, it is also important before we start to ask ourselves why we are publishing, or what is the purpose of publication. So basically the purpose of the publication or research is creation of new useful knowledge. Okay? It's not merely creation of knowledge, but the purpose of research, and then of course we get the research published, is to creation of the useful knowledge, and then is dissemination. If the new knowledge, if is not really new, it's just repetition, or it is now not of very good use, it's not addressing any research problem, then it's not really worth spending a lot of time on that topic, or doing the research which does not contribute any way to the literature, to the theory, or any socio-economic or scientific problems. Publisher or editors, they don't like articles which don't get citation. And that could be, of course, if you publish something which is very interesting, that is bound to gain interest and of the readership and have a lot of public citations. But if not, then it would probably not be something of worth doing. So articles are therefore checked on the basis of originality, the relevance to the disciplines, and the significance, what contribution they're going to make. So these are things very important as an editor we see in an article before we make a decision whether to send it for the review or just desk reject it. So some question which a checklist, I think is good to check the originality of the idea, whether it is new, it is challenging, something which we are doing, it is something which is very hot topic, or does it provide any solution to any difficult research problem. So if the answer to these type of question are this checklist which I have, you may think of some other questions. So that means there's a idea which is worth entertaining, and it is good that we do research in that. Now, in terms of choosing the journal, we look at the scope of the journal, its aim, the type of articles they usually publish. If you are focusing on a journal which publish qualitative research, or is publish quantitative research, or whether there's a journal which publish short articles like letters, 2,000, 3,000 words, or they publish long. So that's something very important to keep in mind. And also readership of the journal, which sort of people are interested in that, and what topic they usually are interested in. That is also important. I mean, we could say that sometimes the editorial board or the readership may have their biases, or they are interested in certain topics, but that is something important if we think we want to publish somewhere. And also the frequency of the publication. Some journals, they might be annual, some are quarterly, some are monthly, and even there are some bi-monthly journals. So that also then defines the number of articles they can publish, and then the pace at which they will deal with your article. If they publish only one issue in a year, so probably they will look at your article next year if they have got everything published this year. So that's something important. Now, uh, some question we can ask ourselves at this point is that uh, a typical component of article, okay, what we should expect in an article, and what are the important things which makes a good article a good article. So the structure of the article or a manuscript is fairly, I would say, standard. A lot of us probably know that an article usually starts with a title, abstract, and keywords. These are the things which are copyright free. So we can read the title, abstract, author details, their affiliations, maybe without the copyright restriction, and they are open access very often. But after that is introduction and background, a little bit about the theoretical background of the article or the research. Then comes the section of methods, methodology, followed by finding, discussion, conclusion, and then acknowledgement and the references. In some cases, some researchers, they put the findings and discussion together. So that depends on you whether you want to have separate section for them. It depends really. Usually, I've noticed that they are together, and that's the way I like them too. Now, the title, we should not judge a book by its title, and we should not judge a research article by its title. But the fact of the matter is that title provides or should provide a good reflection of what is in the paper. I have come across questions. So what should be the title? I would say, I mean, there is no rule book really what should be a good title, but the title, usually the journals allow you to have maximum of 16 words in the title. It should not be too short, it should not be too long, but it should be something which provide a good reflection of what is this article about. Then comes the abstract. Abstract summarizes the paper in a way that it starts with maybe in a line or so purpose, and then you talk about the methodology which you have used, your key findings, and it finishes with contribution and implication. And whole this thing, you need to write it in some cases in 150 words, in some cases journal asks you to write in 200 words. So 150, 200 words ish summary of your paper, and followed by keywords. The keywords are also called descriptive. They are important because you are submitting the paper. System sometimes asks you to provide keywords, but when it comes to somebody looking for the relevant papers, and they put the keywords in the search, and if you have used the good keywords relevant, then it will be helpful for them to find your paper, read it, and then if they like, they may cite it. Now the introduction part is the first section in your paper, and I always tell my students that that is very, very important. As a reviewer, if I'm reading the introduction and I am not convinced about a few things which I'm going to talk about now, I would probably not read rest of the paper. Okay? So the introduction section is very, very important. According to Swales, the introduction, we can define it, or we can dissect it into three moves or three subsections. The first section deal with establishing the territory, where you basically identify the research topic by providing the sort of background information and contextualize your paper in the existing body of knowledge. Basically, what were you gonna do in paper, or what is the background of your research, etc. And then you identify niche, where you basically identify some issues in the topic, okay, which is to do with identification of niche. And in the last stage, then you occupy that niche. Okay, so you provided a background, and then you identified some issues in that area, and then you said how you are going to address these issues. I will reflect on these three things now in a little bit more detail. So first thing is establishing research territory. Okay. uh, how we can do that? We can show that by the journal research area, which is important, and some interesting facts and figures, and some problems related to research in this area, and then also introducing and reviewing item of the previous research. So, well, look, this is the research area, these are studies done. However, then we'll come to the gaps. That's where we move from establishing a research territory to then the establishing a niche, what we are going to do. So therefore we indicate gaps in the existing body of knowledge, and we raise questions based on those research gaps. And following from that, then we occupy the niche. We can do that by outlining the purpose of what we are doing. So in a way, once we have identified the gap, then we can say, okay, well, our research is now addressing these gaps, and this is asking these questions and aiming to answer these questions. And then we can also provide some key findings. So it started with a kind of background, and then you identified the research gaps, and then you said that your research is going to address these research gaps. And this is three-way or three moves good introduction should be. And pitfalls of good, well, of an introduction, if there's a pitfall, it won't be a good introduction, is that it's not too concise, it's too lengthy. That's particularly if you are introduction, if you are in the social sciences, in economics, finance, or business studies, if you got introduction, and then you got literature review section followed by that, which is quite comprehensive. So it's good to have introduction fairly brief. I would say a couple of pages, A4 pages would be ample. Introduction is mixed bag of everything and doesn't follow those three moves which I just mentioned by Sohail and others. So that also be confusing, and if the reviewer gets confused in introduction, they will just stop there. And then also, if you are making claims which are not really like kind of grandiose claims, or using a language where you are claiming that your research is seminal and you're gonna do the paradigm changes or something like that, that is, I think, it's good to be do it implicitly rather than very explicitly. One thing which I noticed that some, which it doesn't put me off, but I noticed that some reviewers may put off by that, it when the authors keep saying this is the first study which is doing this is the first study which is doing it. So yeah, well, yeah, do it in a language which maybe I think more humble rather than boasting. Yeah. Then comes the, I think, the theoretical background or the framework. Theory by definition is explanation of a phenomenon, and if it is a social sciences, then is a theory is an explanation of a social phenomenon, and if it's a real hardcore sciences, then it's a scientific phenomenon. That's by the definition what the theory is. So it's very important that we define the theoretical problem in our research, particularly those journals which are high rank journals or more prestigious journal in the business studies or social sciences. They often ask the question is like, what, how do you add to the theoretical debate, or how you contribute to the theory. That is very important. Unless a journal which is more empirical journal, they may not focus on that. But I think uh, in journals which are like general readership journals, not only solely empirical journal, they do ask about that. And even the good journals which are empirical journal, they also demand if is any contribution to, let's say, econometric theory or statistical theory, they may ask that question too. So that is very important that we do specify the relationship among different concepts. We refer to relevant selection on the debate of these matter. That is very important. Why is the theory relevant to the problem? We also need to show that. And the reflection on the theoretical contribution, I think that's not only in the literature review section. If later you come to the your discussion, discussion of your findings, at that point, if you think you are uh, contributing to the theory, which I think for higher impact factor or ranked journal is necessary, then it is important to refer back to theory again, and also in the conclusion. So I think that is very important that we keep a theory in context and theoretical contribution of our research in context if we are submitting to a high rank journal. Now, in the literature review, one thing is what we call the file drawer effect, where we only care about those research or those research findings which show positive results or statistically significant results rather than insignificant. When we're doing the literature review or discussing the existing literature, it's important to reflect on both the positive and the negative results, and also those results which are not significant. Actually, it is important also because then you can reflect on the contradiction in the existing body of knowledge, and based on those then contradiction which you have established by providing contrasting views, then you can say, well, maybe we need to look at this phenomena from a different context than the ways it has been looked so far. So I think that is also important. Uh, you can also question like the results which exists previously, whether they are specific to a market or an economy or a specific constituency. That is also important, and whether there's been a time variation over a period of time or generalization of those results. That is good in a way that it may provide you some basis to argue in terms of originality of your research, but I would say it cannot be the case that okay, well, this study was done on US and now we are doing a study on the UK, and then this study is on the China or this is on Japan. This case is slightly difficult to make only basis on the different market or different economy or different country study, unless you make a strong argument that why this might be different. Sometimes I do get paper and they say, well, the studies previously done on these countries, but it's not done on this country. And I do say, well, we have 200 countries in the world, or maybe 200, two or three more or less, but do we need 200 studies on every single topic? Okay, that's when we say something, see something as a scientific, we believe that it will be could be generalized to or replicated same way in other constituencies. Therefore, that will not be enough argument to claim originality. Now, methodology, it's very important that we provide details, but at the same time, we remain brief. So the reader should be basically the purpose of methodology is the reader could understand what method you have used and how you have applied it. And by reading the article, they can then reproduce the experiment, replicate the experiment by following your methodology. It is good to not provide the description of the methodology. If you use a method, you use any method, if you use a regression analysis, for instance, you use a panel data analysis, you do not need to describe the what it is. Okay, you basically need to provide the details that you use this method and how you use this method. You can argue that what is the reason you use these methods as compared to other methods available, but you do not need to describe in a way that the reader may think, well, actually you are reading a book on research methods. That is not the purpose. Reviewers will, of course, criticize if it's incomplete, incorrect description, or your method has any flaws. So it's very important to be aware of any flaws in the methods yourself, and then maybe you change the method or you provide justification why did you use that in respect of those limitations which were there. And then comes the finding. It is very important that uh, the findings are, of course, essential for discussion. Do not hide any findings or the data. Well, that is also ethical, I would say, in a way. If you have done an analysis from different dimensions, for instance, you did an analysis which was on many countries, and then you decided, oh, maybe divide the countries into groups of developing countries or developed countries or in any other category, then you can have subheadings. And it is good to do that. It is good to do analysis from different dimensions. Actually, it shows the richness of your experiment, and it also sometimes put you in a position where you can claim originality from different dimensions, that you don't look at the relationship among variables from one dimension, but you look at from the different dimension. So that is also very, very important. Before Swale and Frack, they said there are some moves in the discussions. So when it comes to discussion, sometimes, as I said before, discussion is a part of uh, your findings and analysis. Sometimes it is separate. If it's separate, then you may have to restate the findings and accomplishment. You evaluate the results and you compare them with the previous result. That's also very important. And one thing I noticed in the discussion is discussion is not the statement of your results or description of your results. That's something which I noticed. When you are discussing something, you are discussing it, you are not merely describing it. So you don't say that A has a positive relationship with B, and then B has a positive relationship with C or whatever. But you need to go into the, like, evaluate it. What does it mean if there's a is a positive relationship? What it implies? What could be the reason? What is the channel of transmission? How it relates to the existing literature? So interpretation, explanation, not only the description of the results, uh, and of course then implication and recommendation which would follow. Uh, so discussion is, of course, very, very important. It is important to then contrast your findings with existing evidence, and do not ignore if some research previously has provided different results. But you need to give the reason that why might be that there are some differences in your results as compared to the studies which been done before on similar topics. And last part is conclusion. And I think one thing I notice, I think it's maybe 70% of the time, that the conclusion is their author started by reintroducing the paper. In this study we have done this, and if I'm reviewing, I always give the comment, look, I've read your abstract, I've read your introduction, I have read your literature, methodology, findings, and now I've reached to conclusion. And you are telling me in this studies what we have done. I know what you have done till that point. I know what method you use. I know what your findings are. All I want to know now, what is your conclusion? What is the lesson we have learned by doing everything, which I know we have done, because you have said that in introduction in the previous section. So conclusion must be just conclusion and maybe implications, but not reintroduction of your paper, or it should not be the restatement of your finding or your methodology. And of course, at the end, you can talk about the future possibilities of the research. Now, once you have written something, it is good. You can go actually in the uh, backward order or back order and consider. You can this order if you like. You can look at the tables and the figures. You can then read your methods and discussion. Then you look at the conclusion, and then you go back and abstract. Look at the abstract and title again. Often, once you have done it, you may end up changing your title based on your findings and your conclusion. So it's good to go read it in reverse order. Now, at the end, we add acknowledgement. If there's been any financial support, any advisors, anybody who has commented, maybe you can do that. If you presented a paper in a conference, I think that's very important to put that in acknowledgement. If it's a good conference, that gives a good signal to the editor and to the reviewers. References, very often I noticed that the authors, they don't pay much attention to the referencing style. There are sometimes missing references, which gives a very bad impression to the reviewers and the editor, and that shows that maybe the authors were not very careful. So it might be that they might have made a mistake in their analysis if it's empirical paper. So yeah, so it's very good that we give good signals. So references must be checked. And now that is kind of structure of the paper. Editor's view, what the editor would like to see when a paper comes. The first thing is editor look at the paper, or it's somehow reader friendly or editor friendly. It is the what is the subject, what is the title, read the abstract of the paper, and that should give a clear idea what is the paper about, what method they use, did they use the journal format. So a quick scanning of the paper editor does. And in this quick scanning, presentation is also critical. So if the editor identify or gets this idea that this seems like a replication, okay, oh, look at it, it already got 3 typos, okay, so okay, well, just reject it. So it's very important that when you send a paper, it is a finished product, and by in the first impression, which by reading the abstract and a overarching view of the article, it gives a good impression to the editor. In terms of selection of the journal, there are 2 methods. First is that we first write the article and then decide the journal, or the other is we decide the journal and then write the article. I think the probably the best way is to, once you are doing the research, you go ahead with it with the original idea, and while you're doing it, then during the process, maybe you come up with some potential venues you'll be able to send them to, and the reference list at the end of the article there also gives indication which could be the potential venue. uh, we submit to the journal. The journals are, of course, ranked based on different benchmark criterias. These are some of the rankings, like ABS ranking, which we used in the UK. It's now, it was Association of Business School, and now it become Chartered Association of Business School. And then there's also ABDC, Australian Business Dean Council, and there are some other indices or ranking agencies, which, depending on the country where you are, the different matrices are used. But if we look at, let's say, the ABS ranking, or these ranking, how do they rank journals? So they do rank A star, well, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, and 4 star. And what do they mean by that? What is a 4 star article or journal, or a journal which is given a 4 star ranking? What sort of things they focus on? They are those outlets or the journal where that quality is world leading in terms of originality, significance, and rigor. So they got to be, any research got to be original. They publish focus on the originality of the idea, its significance is important, and its empirical and scientific rigor. And if we and that is world leading in that sense. But if we come to the 1 star, then the quality is something which may be nationally recognized. So the journals which are maybe have reputation in terms of originality, significance, and rigor at national level, they are not world leading journal to say. So therefore, anything else falls in between 1 and 4 star. If we dig deeper into the meaning and interpretation of that what makes a quality world leading and what makes the national. So the 4 star journal, they are the ones which they have a strong focus on theory, and they respond to high profile debates, and propose a significant paradigm shift, and provide new perspectives. As compared to, if we go to the 1 star, then it's maybe something which is engages more exclusively with empirical matter of substantive concern, but those matter might be of domestic nature, and they might be focused on the very niche areas, not very broad areas, which could be of global importance in a specific subject. So that is one example. I won't name the journal, but if you look at the journal which are high rank, you would notice that there might be the journal which uh, are the journals which are in one field, as is, let's say, a journal of finance or American Economic Review or economic journal. So these are four-star journal, but they publish for a very wider uh, uh, readership in the subject, rather than maybe a very niche specific area in which they publish. So but these are the element based on which the journals are ranked. There's a lot of criticism of course, these ranking, but we are where we are, and so therefore we got to keep in mind, whether we kind of like them or not, that some institutions, they do pay attention. Well, a lot of institutions pay attention to the rankings. uh, in terms of criteria, when we are submitting, is good to look at the journals which are well established. An advice I give to the early career researcher is that uh, do not be patient, and try to publish in the journals which have good repute. And the reason is this, that then your work will get to the wider readership. It may help you in terms of your career progression too. And so it's important to not give up, and keep trying to get in the journal which have which are with reputable publishers, and which have a good impact factor or repute, which are peer reviewed, of course. That is very important. A research, peer reviewed research, is actually, as I said before, is the gold standard of the scholarship and the scientific research. And also the time to publish, that's important, where you're sending it depending on how much in rush you are. uh, Impact factor of the journal, that's calculated based on the number of citation uh, per article, you can say, they do get. So this is one way to look at the journal. Some of the very reputable journals, actually, they don't have very high impact factor, but it again depends on what your ambitions are. But usually, reputable journal, they have reasonably good impact factor, and which also mean that they are widely read, and when they are read, they are cited. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, when you submit a paper, one part is covering letter, and most of the editors I talk to, they have the same opinion. They share this opinion that the covering letter is very important. Covering letter is an opportunity for you to sell your work. So it is important that in the covering letter we make a good case that why we are submitting to this journal, and what is the contribution of our paper to the subject. And if some cases you like, you can also recommend some reviewers, which, if they are actually good uh, good reviewers, in a sense that they have contribution to the field or the subject, then the editor probably would consider them. In some cases I do get suggestions, but if I look at the suggestion, if the reviewer is, let's say, maybe from the same institution, or has published with the author uh, very recently, or maybe from the same geographical location, all of them are there, let's say, very new researcher, then there's less chance that I will send the paper, or I will take that suggestion. uh, yeah, we do not really reject based on only good or bad covering letter, but the covering letter gives a good impression. And actually, I think a good covering letter contribute to the editor decision, or helps him in deciding whether this paper is worth sending to the reviewers. Reviewers don't necessarily read the covering letter, because letter is to the editor, not to the reviewers. Now, the editorial process is a long process. You start, you submit your paper, editor check the basic requirements. If they are met, paper is seemingly good, falls in the aim and objective of the journal, then they send it, assign the reviewers. Otherwise, they reject. Reviewers may reject the paper, or they may say, okay, revise the paper. And if they say revise the paper, is come back to the editor send it back to the authors, and again we go in the process again, depending on most of the time the, I mean, looking at the rejection rates, the high, the three star and above journal usually have a rejection rate of 90% or plus. And like maybe 30% ish paper get rejected at the desk. Rejection in some cases it may be higher, 40%, because there are very limited number of reviewers we who can agree to reviewing the paper. Because if we send a paper for review, reviewers, we can request somebody once uh, in a or twice in a few months time, but we can't send paper to same reviewers, many paper to the same reviewers. So it's hard to find good reviewers for the editors. So therefore, uh, rejection rate is high. But if we follow what I've been talking about, I hope that will help in at least passing the desk of the editors and also getting some positive feedback from the reviewers. Now, yeah, as I was saying, the peer review process is overloaded. It is hard to find good reviewers. In early a few days ago, I was looking at a paper. Actually, I got an email from an author who has submitted the paper that when their paper will get a decision. And I look at it and I said, uh, there's one reviewer who has given the report, and I need one more reviewer. And a few days pass, after like 2 3 weeks, that same author sent an email again, so can you please give me an update where we stand on the review process. I said, look, well, so far I have got one review report, as I mentioned before. I have sent your paper to 17 reviewers so far, and I've only got one success out of 17. But I need a second reviewer. And now somebody else has agreed to review the paper, who will take, of course, a few more weeks. And I can guarantee you that your paper will be given full consideration. What I cannot guarantee you is when you will get the decision on your paper, because that is not in my hand. What I can do is I can keep looking for the reviewers, uh, and eventually, hopefully, I'll get two review reports, and then based on that, I can make the decision. So it's very important to be patient. Sometimes editors may get annoyed, and then they make a decision which may not be a positive decision, I would say. Uh, Review and editorial process, common reason if the paper is approved for the journal. Again, something to keep in mind. Paper is interest, covers issues, whether it is application, replication, or is actual contribution, uh, with the incremental advancement, or is actually a good contribution to what is known, novelty, meeting the uh, requirement of the submission, and poor writing. I mean, if somebody is submitting a paper and they are not sure, it is better to get the paper proofread professionally. I think is very, very important. That gives a really bad impression if there are any mistakes in the language. And then we have again a checklist which we can ask ourselves: is the work is interesting to the audience? If there's a significance value which our paper is offering, is the perspective consistent with the journal and the conclusion drawn? All these questions we can ask ourselves, and this checklist is similar to the reasons for which the paper gets rejected. So if we answer is yes to these, then it means those reasons will not be there, reasons of rejection, and therefore we would expect that, okay, maybe our uh, paper will sail through the editor's desk, and then we will look at the reviewer reports in details. Now, dealing with the reviewer comments, as I said before, uh, 3 star journal, ABS journals, or ABDC ranking, maybe A or A stars, their rejection rate is 90% or more. So only 10% of the paper get or less gets published. papers which are submitted. And if we get there for a revision decision, that is actually a good news, not a bad news. So we should take it positively, and we should take that as an opportunity to revise our work. Now, in some cases, I did notice that after revision, the reviewers, they didn't agree to the revision made, and they recommend the rejection. uh, in some cases they accept, some cases they reject, or in some cases they ask for further revisions. They are not happy. So if we given an opportunity to revise the paper, we should take it very, very seriously, because in a way that gives us a chance if we can address the reviewers comment. Now, uh, as I said, the second review is possible. Once we get a decision which is revision, we should address the reviewers' comments point by point. Now, one mistake I noticed that uh, the authors do not provide a point-to-point response to the reviewer comments, and they do not provide specific details about the changes or actions they have taken in the light of those comments, and it becomes very hard to find what they have done. Okay. It is good to highlight those parts of your paper and provide a page number, a section number, any changes are made there. In some cases, you may not agree to the reviewers. If you don't, then it is good to provide a very, uh, in a way, diplomatic response, and in a polite way, and say that for this reason you think it might not be a good idea to go this route or make these changes, or you use this thing, or you use this method, or whatever is the case, for these reasons. So you provide your reasons respectfully while you are disagreeing to the reviewers. Now, never treat publication as a lottery. If you get rejections, you should not submit somewhere else without making changes in your manuscript, because sometimes it ends up with the same reviewers again, and they will reject it again. It happened with me. I rejected a paper somewhere. After a while, it came back to me and from a different journal, and there was nothing changed. The problem or flaw was still there, so I had to give the same feedback, and unfortunately it was the same decision. A possible strategy could be, if you want to submit to the same journal, actually you can. So even if you have a rejection, you can submit to the same journal. If you are feeling very strongly about that, you can write a covering letter. You can mention that in this now version you have make the revisions, okay, and you have also attached a summary of revisions if you want to, and you can argue that you still think that this paper now is suitable for this journal and all the concern has been addressed. So it might be that if you make a very, very good case, editor may send to the same reviewers again, and they may change their mind. If you have really good reason, it is also possible. Ethical issues in publications, there's a very important results, whether they are positive, negative, significant, insignificant, they should be reported. Replication is a big problem. Some of the papers, there was a paper actually that in economics, a big chunk of papers, they are not replicable, even they are published in the top journal. So that is very important that result should be replicable, and there should be no falsification of result. Plagiarism, I don't need to talk about, is using somebody else word, others work, and not acknowledging it. This is not fair. Duplication of submission. In some cases, we've been contacted by the publisher that the paper which has come to you has also been submitted to another journal in the same under the same publisher, and it happens, I think, twice in the last year or so, and the both journals then rejected the paper, and in some cases there could be blacklisting of those authors if they do that. So that is also very important that these things are kept in mind. Don't send your paper to a different journal unless until you get a decision from where you have submitted it before. and also acknowledging the previous research, conflict of interest that must be acknowledged if there is any. And when, let's say, you submitted a paper, you went through revisions, and then it got accepted, hard works and consistency pays off. Then we sign the copyright agreement, which is good to be signed as soon as possible. Once the paper is published, the publisher will send you the agreement. It is online these days, and that's a time to celebrate in a way uh, all the hard work which you have done. But as I said before, research is a is a is a marathon in a way. If you want to be research active for a prolonged period of time, it's good to keep publishing even one article a year, rather taking a long term break, and then it becomes very hard to get back to it. So when we have the publish or finally published uh, work, we do not see how much hard work has gone into it, how many revisions it went through. We just see the final outcome. But once it is published, it will be in public domain forever. So that is a good thing about the research and the published work. Of course, the process is important, but we also need to keep in mind that whatever we are doing is we are creating knowledge, or we are aiming to create knowledge. So for long time we will be cited, other people will read our work. So that is also important. And there's of course no substitute, looking at the ranking aside and other things, of doing something which interests us. So if the research interests us, then we should do the things which we are interested in. And of course then we will lead to creation of knowledge which will be of the value, because only thing we focus is the quality and the interest. It's good to be curious, therefore have an opinion. And research is a process in which we also learn when we go through this process, and we create new knowledge. Because if we know what was known, then there was no reason for do research or to do research. So the sole purpose is to create new knowledge which didn't exist before. So it's good to be there for curious. When you are curious, you will come up with new ideas, new questions, and then you will go and answer those questions, or try to find the answers of those questions. And the process of finding the answers of those questions is actually what the research is all about. Some of the references which I was talking about, sales and others, and thank you very much indeed. That's all from me. I would stop here now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad Ali Nasir. What a wonderful start you have given to this webinar. The way you have shown your content, which you would have wanted to cover in that webinar, was so great. I was looking through the content, which was so great and simple at the same time. I love the way you just started with the showing the difference between the PhD thesis and the scholarly writing, particularly the research paper. What is the difference? And then you showed us the structure. And I love the part, the way you describe each and everything in detail. For example, the introduction itself, and what a nicely you have just mentioned that as a reviewer, you are not that interested if the introduction is not that good. So it means that it was not only from the author's side, but the author's perspective, but you also showed the reviewer perspective, that how does the reviewer they review the paper and what is the role of introduction, and simultaneously the literature review as well. You mentioned what are the contradictory theories and contradictory results of the different studies that plays in a significant role while writing the literature review. Similarly, the methodology section, how the new methods are being described and each and everything. I love the way you described the how we can have the wonderful discussion and what is the difference between the interpretation and discussion, because sometimes the beginner researcher they may not have the clear idea of writing the discussion, which is very important for our paper. So I think you have covered very nicely all these things, then the implication, the limitations, even the references that some people, some or our researcher, beginner researcher, they do not care for the research, the references in an appropriate way. And then how to target the different journals, the editor's perspective. Very nicely you have covered the and talked about the cover letter itself, because we had received already one question regarding that. What is the role of the cover letter while submitting to the journal, the paper? And you have already addressed the question in your wonderful slides. And similarly, you have shown a wonderful tips regarding the ethics in the publication and what things needs to be considered while going through all this journey. And very nicely, you have talked about that it's the process, and we have to learn this process. And everybody sweats. And we have gone through the difficult stages, and we are still going through different rejection and different difficult stages in publication. But this is how we are learning and we are growing. So these are the part, and you have very nicely shown to our audience from around the globe that even you have gone through these kind of experiences, and still you are learning, and still you are trying to improve your work. And I think that's the wonderful lesson for us. So what a wonderful explanation and powerful content you share with our audience. And now there is a time for certain question answer which are waiting for your explanation and elaboration. So should we start with the first question, please?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. And now the first question they want to ask that, dear Prof, would you like to share with us what problems did you face initially while publishing? Please share with us, and how did you overcome them? Yes, please.
Uh, yes, I mean, a lot of problem I faced. I think uh, mistakes I made initially was, well, all the things which I was saying. I was, I think, I was weak in every respect and in every aspect. I think in terms of the reflecting on the contribution of my work, that wasn't there. My writing skills were not improved or not that good. Critical writing, particularly uh, argument, reasoning, making a case. Uh, I think that was something which I improved over a period of time, and also I think in terms of improving the empirical skills. So I think in various ways, I think there were limitations, but I think the way maybe I overcome some of the hurdles was, I think, uh, with the hard work, persistence, and the desire to learn. I think that is important. And one thing I think is also important, and that is to to attend many conferences. I think that's something I didn't talk about, but looking at what's going on, what's people are doing, reading widely, I think that also helps. But definitely I would say, uh, in terms of, I think, a lot, the research is, as I said, is about finding the answers of the questions. But sorry about that noise. Research is about finding the answer of the question, but before that you need to have a question, I think. And the ability to question, that comes with, I think, critical thinking. So I think building those muscles in the brain muscles, they took some time. But I would say, yeah, the new researcher, earlier career researcher would probably and their mentors would focus on that, the to improve the ability to question things. I think that helps them.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much for such a wonderful answer. And I think this is very important that the role of conference, which you have also mentioned, you come across new people, you come across new work, and you see what the people are doing. So you get a lot of ideas from there, and sometimes our shortcomings and weaknesses as well. And even you just mentioned, and I could see in your presentation that everything was coming out of your own experiences, which you have experienced in your life, and you learn from it. And this is how we grow actually. That's why everything you were sharing was from the heart. I love that part, that you are sharing everything openly, and you are accepting your weaknesses, and which you have turned into the strength. But initially you recognize it as the weaknesses, and that's why you improved it. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And now another very interesting question they want to ask, that Prof, from where you got the inspiration for publishing and writing in so good journals, because we need motivation and inspiration. Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, I think the motivation and inspirations just comes from the fact that when you see, when you read and when you see other people, or uh, uh, you go to the events or the conferences where people are presenting their work, and then you engage with the literature and you see what is new there, so that you try to do the same thing, or you say, okay, you would also like to publish in the high impact journals. That give you inspiration, I think. uh, I think that engagement has an influence. So if you are engaging with the other scholars which are working in an area, that kind of have an influence on you. And therefore I said going to the conference is important also. um, Reading the literature which is in the area where you are interested in, and trying to find what is new, then that makes you interested in, okay, well, that is something which came out in this journal, and that is new and interesting, and how I can take it forward. Yeah, I think that that way maybe, I think you get inspired. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think there are silent messages as well in your
Yeah.
one answer, because again, everything counts. The conferences, the new people, the new ideas, your curiosity, all these things will shape you, and you get inspiration from it. Thank you. And there's one another interesting question, and this researcher wants your advice. Please advise our audience that what to do. They want to ask that what if a journal is not responding after submission of third revisions?
Okay.
This
Yeah.
definitely researcher wants your answer. Yes, please.
Yeah. Yes. So I mean, it depends on the situation to situation. If the journal is not responding after the third submission, okay, like that mean that it might be they sent to the reviewers, and the reviewer is taking time. So I don't know in specific case what was the story, but in some time what happened, that when you submit a paper, when you make a decision on revision and the paper comes, then the reviewer refuse to look at those revisions. And that is a very difficult position for any editor, because now they were set of reviewers, they reviewed the paper, you gave a decision to revise, now paper has been revised. Now if you send to new reviewers, they may have a different opinion. They may look at the things differently. Ideally you would like to send it to the same reviewers which have looked at it before, uh, and they have refused it. So it is a difficult situation. But I would say that if after some time, let some time pass, look at like journals, how quickly they respond to, and after some time passes, then you can write an email to the editor very politely and say that, well, like we have reviewed, we have revised, this was the third revision, and we have addressed the all the comments, and we are very eager to know that if the referees are happy with our revisions, in case they would like us to do anything further, we would be more than happy to do that. So in a polite way, you can ask editor after substantial amount of time, once you have submitted that, and the editor sees the submission in their editorial system or panel which we have of every journal. So when I'll open my journals, I can see, okay, how many papers are under review, how many papers are uh, have been reviewed and ready to make decision. I also get an email when the paper is ready for decision, or when a reviewer accepts the request or rejects the request. So system keeps reminding us. So therefore, you do not really need to remind editor, I would say. But if there's like a really substantial amount of time passed, and it's the third revision, then you can write a, the way I mentioned, a very polite email and ask them about that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think very nice suggestion you have given that they should wait for a substantial amount of time. And if still they are not getting, then very politely, as you suggested, that they can email to the editor in order to have the reply from the journal. Thank you. And now another very mysterious question they want to ask, because these are the different myths in the minds of the beginner researcher, and they want to ask that does the corresponding author does the corresponding author profile matters, or is it same for everyone? Because there are certain myths that if the corresponding author has a very good profile, so there is a chances of paper acceptance, even going for the review process before even desk rejection. So your take on that, please.
Yeah. Uh, I, I mean, I don't think a paper would be rejected based on the fact that the corresponding author is not a very senior scholar. Uh, I don't think the paper will be solely rejected based on that. If the paper is good, that would sail through. Even the corresponding author is a postgraduate researcher or a PhD student. But I would say, I can't speak for everybody. People have their biases. If a corresponding author is established researcher who has done a lot of research and he is known in an area. Uh, People are human. I don't know. That may give a signal to the editor that, oh, well, this is a very senior scholar, so maybe this is something I need to look at seriously. But I don't think that would by default give a guarantee that the paper would be accepted, because even uh, it goes, it passes the editor desk. The next thing is reviews, and peer review is usually double blind. So the reviewers don't know who is the corresponding author or who is the any author. So even if it helps getting passing the editor desk, if it does, I don't think it always does, but even if it is, but the next step would be the reviewers, and they won't know who is written the paper. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much once again. I'm enjoying the way you are giving answer. Really very interesting. But since we have time limitation, so we take the last question. I think it's another very interesting question, and they want to ask regarding the special issue. That please share with us the merits and demerits of journal publications under the special issues, because nowadays various journals are offering the special issues. So your
Yeah.
thoughts on that, please.
Yeah. Yeah. The special issues, as I said, name, what it says on the tin, the special issues are specific to an area or a title. So, for instance, I'm guest editing a special issue in Journal of Environment Management at the moment, which is the geopolitical conflicts and the environment management. Or recent last year, there was a special issue in energy economics, and that was on the energy shocks, which caused a lot of economic turmoil, specifically in the Europe, I would say, and the inflation problem, and also affected the economies adversely. So on that theme, there was a special issue. So special issues are specific to a theme and an area. They have merits. Merit in the sense that the usually the papers are dealt with very quickly, and you are in the theme, editors will have a quick look, and uh, it's a short span of time in which they are publishing the special issue, their specific deadline. So you are not then, the quality will be again checked everything, but you will not be competing with a journal audience or submissions in that journal. So in a way that the competition is narrow, still fierce in a way, and you will have to write something which is specific to the theme. Like I did guess I did special issues, and sometimes I get paper which are not in the theme. So they could have gone to the journal, and they may have a more chance of being published or getting published. But given that they were not in the theme and submitted to the special issue, they get rejected. So that is the one, you can say, limitation, that they got paper then need to fit. Not only it should make a contribution, but it should also fit the theme of the special issue. Whereas yeah, there are advantages, of course, in terms of maybe editor look at it quickly, because you have designated editors, two or three, which are looking at the paper. So they may look at it quickly, they find some reviewers, and you get a quick decision. So in that regard, yes. In terms of the way the employer sees it, I don't think there's any difference in the Europe or UK. I don't know about other constituencies or geographical locations in Asia or other countries, how they see it. In terms of that getting citation, publication, post publication, I think they are part of the journal, so they would be just an additional issue among the regular issues of the journal. So there is not much difference in that sense, I would say.
Thank you very much. And really wonderful answer that it is the same part of the journal, so there is no discrimination regarding that thing. But the important thing is the what you have highlighted is the it is particularly on such a scope and the theme which it has been developed, and it will only consider those papers which are within that theme. So I think that is the most important. And you have nicely mentioned that the competition is comparatively low because this call is particular, and the paper within that theme would be considered for publication. So that and once again, I would say that I really enjoyed this session with you. You talked about very many the different things which we have gone through. I have gone through personally so many things, and we learn through various experiences. But for our audience, you have shared your experiences in a wonderful way that they can avoid certain bad experiences, and they can learn from your experiences, our experiences, and they can do in a very wonderful way. uh, uh, Dr. Muhammad Ali Nasir, at the end of this session, we ask our each guest regarding their message to the world. So, please, what is your message to the world as a speaker, author, teacher, researcher, trainer, learner, professional, and educator? Yes, please.
Well, well, I was not ready for that type of assignment, but I would say, I don't know, not to the whole world, or maybe I could talk to the fellow scholarships, I would say, fellow scholars and researcher. And then I would say that, yeah, just try to be interested, and try to do the things which you are interested in. uh, Once when you will do that, you will reach to the excellence, and you will produce the things which you are interested in, and then you will do them well, because you will put your heart and soul in them. That's very much true when it comes to research. uh, so yeah, do research on the things and the issues which you are interested and which inspires you. And I think then you will create very valuable knowledge and contribute to the society and contribute to the world. So that is, I think, maybe my message or my plea to the early career researchers, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you very much. What a wonderful message you have given to the world. Yes, do follow your passion and do the things which can be a real contribution back to the society, but that must be something which you are interested in, because only then your originality will come in its true shape. So really wonderful message. Thank you very much once again, Dr. Muhammad Ali Nasir. And to the audience that please do follow our distinguished guest speaker through his research work and you can email him for future learning and guidance. He's very generous and always ready to help the people. Moreover, wonderful explanation and powerful content which the great speaker has already elaborated will help you to learn and develop your understanding regarding how to publish in high impact journal. So take advantage of all the information, important tips and suggestions shared by an expert. So that's all we have time for today. And thank you once again, Dr. Muhammad Ali Nasir. And
Thank you very
I would
much.
also like to thank you to our audience from around the globe who join us and who will be watching this session. It was a wonderful session with the Dr. Muhammad Ali Nasir. And if you have additional question about information shared today, please email us or connect to the speaker directly through his email or social media account. So thank you all for your support and liking our session. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session. Until next session, take care of yourself. Bye bye.